Even though our world is broken, there is hope in the gospel of Jesus Christ. Candid Mike is here to share the gospel through life lessons and heavy-hitting interviews that will leave you inspired. In each episode, you will have the opportunity to make a difference in your personal life and in the lives of those you love. Today's episode has something good for you. Hey everybody, welcome back to Candid Mike. If this is your first time, welcome. I'm Mitchell Lavender, your host, and I'm excited to be with you guys. You are tuning in to our character series, again, which is designed to help us better love, serve, and influence the people in our circle. Who's that? Our family, our friends, our co-workers. By putting into practice the Word of God, we can see His power work in our lives. So if this is the first episode you're jumping into, take some time whenever you can and go back to the beginning and listen on through. There are lots of great lessons on practical ways to put the Word of God into practice in your life. I hope it's been encouraging to you. And those of you who caught last week's episode, I'm wondering, how is showing kindness to people going? Are you seeing a difference? Are you seeing God's Word work in your life? If you are, please let us know. Leave a comment on Podbean or send an email to candidmikepodcast@gmail.com. You guys are awesome. I want to update you on a couple things that God's been doing. First of all, He's been allowing me and my lovely partner to see Him increase our faith. He's been allowing us to have people that we're serving. We are serving a lot of people. In case this is your first time listening, I serve as an evangelist up in Tallahassee at Crossway Church. My wife helps me lead the campus ministry as well. And God has been helping us just see breakthroughs. People are constantly looking for ways to contribute. The ministry is growing, the church is growing, and particularly people in the campus ministry are really listening to the Word. They are responding to God's Word with humility and are trying to put it into practice. Our own family, which lives in different parts of the United States, they're having a lot of breakthroughs. Even though they're going through a lot of deep things, we've been able to have some deep conversations through those things. One thing that's going on is we have an aunt who is not so healthy right now. So if you could please be praying for our aunt. I'm not going to say her name over the podcast, but if you could pray for our aunt, that would be an encouragement to us. And we really need prayers there just for the family, because health is a big thing and it can definitely be heavy to carry. My brother CJ, my grandmother, if you guys listen to this, along with Chrissy, Amy, my dad, my mom, Uncle James, Jacqueline, you guys encourage and inspire Hope and I so much, and we're just so thankful for the way you love us, for the way you encourage us, for the way you interact with us and trust us. You guys are such a part of what we've been experiencing as far as those deep conversations go, as well as seeing God increase our faith. And some cool things that happened this past week. We had such a great time with Ron and Lorianne Conkling. They're from Tampa. They're not from Tampa, but they live in Tampa, and they serve as evangelists at the Anchor Point Church. Great body of believers. Nilson Ramirez and Elena Ramirez were here a few weeks ago in February, and we really enjoyed being with them. But we just got to talk and laugh and have fun, and that was so refreshing. Danny and Debbie Ninstill, who we are lucky to call our Tallahassee partners, had us over for their house for some fondue. And let me tell you, I've never had fondue quite like this. It was so fun. I'm going to post a photo on my Instagram page at mlavendercm. If you want to check that photo out, we just had a great time. We had so much fun. We got to take shrimp and steak and onions and green beans and chicken and batter them up and fry them fresh. And we had stuffed mushrooms with cream cheese and bacon inside of them. I mean, it was just a great time. So yeah, if you need some fondue ideas, we got you. It was so good. We had a great time. And yeah, just to fill you guys in on a little bit of the stuff that's not so great right now. We're a little bit tight financially right now. And simultaneously, we have three of our friends who are in the middle of making a huge decision. They're trying to figure out if they want to become Christians. So obviously that's been on our hearts, and it weighs on you because, yeah, I mean, you want your friends to be right with God, right? And then at the same time, you also don't want to be stressing out and worrying about where money's going to come from. And we have a great family. They always look out for us. They have already stepped in and helped us this month because we got hit with an unexpected tax expense. Sometimes you just don't see things coming, and when you're married, if you're married, you know this, but if you're not, this will be good for you to hear. Sometimes when things come up unexpectedly, like finances or unexpected bills, and you look at your bank account and it's below zero, it can add a lot of stress to your marriage. So we are both thankful for how God has been teaching us and working in our lives to help us stay positive and faithful and trust Him and be responsible as well with our money and the way we budget. So we're working through those things. We're doing good. But sometimes these things can be a bit heavy to carry, which brings us to our topic today, which is handling burdens. So a burden, by definition, you already know this probably, it's a heavy load, a duty, a misfortune, something that can cause hardship. Like I felt this morning with the budget and even with my friends making big decisions, anxiety. In some cases, unfortunately, it can turn into grief if something bad happens. But Galatians 6:2 says this: carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Carry each other's burdens. One thing that we're doing right now is we're training for a Go Ruck competition. It's in July. And one thing we do when we ruck together, we're carrying 20, 30, maybe 45 pounds on our back. We're walking together at a 14 to 15 minute mile pace, and we are carrying weights. Some of those weights could be sandbags. Some of them could be fire hose filled with sand. Some of them could just be bags literally full of sand. And as you walk and you carry these burdens, we take turns. Sometimes a guy can go for a minute. Sometimes you can't even carry by yourself. 2 or 3 guys have to carry it together. But what he's getting at in Galatians here is that when we carry each other's burdens, this is the way that we love each other. The law of Christ is love. Love God, love people. But if you look on down in verse 4 and 5, we get something that sounds a bit interesting. So in verse 2, he just told us to carry each other's burdens. But in verse 4 and 5, he says this: each one should test themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. For each one should carry their own load. So we have a juxtaposition here. Carry your own load versus carry each other's burdens. And this is why we're talking about handling burdens today. Because a burden is something that's not meant to be carried alone. Your load is your responsibility. Things that people cannot do for you. Things that you are fully capable of doing yourself. Things you know you need to do. Things you stress out when you don't do because you realize you can do them but you haven't, right? Classic case scenario: if you're in college listening to this and you got a paper due and you haven't started writing yet. Yeah, that's your responsibility. Someone else can't carry that for you, right? But in this context, one thing he's talking about is just our personal responsibility for our walk with God. We have to take the responsibility to follow Christ and to do the things that Christ has asked us to do. And by doing that, we don't have to compare ourselves to anybody else or get caught up in what other people are doing. We know that we're doing what God has asked us to do, and we're being responsible for what we can be responsible with. So that's the load. You can't carry somebody else's load, nor should you, because if you do so, you'll enable them. But a burden is something that they cannot carry alone. So take a second and think about the burdens in your life, the weights that are too heavy to carry, the misfortunes that are too hard to deal with, the hardships that you don't expect. What are some of those things in your life right now? Maybe it's the illness of a loved one. Maybe it's the irresponsibility of your spouse. Maybe it's the weight of your ministry or your church if you lead one. Maybe like me, it's the responsibility of other people's choices. I can sometimes, as I mentioned in earlier episodes, get riled up and stressed out about what other people are choosing to do. That's not my burden to carry, but sometimes I carry it. Maybe it's an illness you have or divorce you are going through or have went through. Maybe it's raising children on your own as a single parent, or having split custody and not being able to be with your child, or perhaps maybe not being able to have children. A burden. Something that you are not capable of carrying on your own. And you may be thinking to yourself how some of us think. Some of us, like we'll see Moses in a few seconds when we go to Exodus 18, some of us work really hard. Some of us work really hard because we grew up having to work really hard. And we don't know what a burden is because we figure it's just life. And maybe you've never had somebody to help you out. Or maybe on the flip side, you've never had to carry a burden because you've always had other people to help you with them or do things for you. Sometimes that can be a burden within itself, to not know what a burden is. Because that can create irresponsibility. It can make it difficult to relate to people with burdens. It can create unrealistic expectations for people who have real life scenarios that they can't shake or get out of because they don't have people to help them. So one side is not worse than the other, but both have their difficulties. Either way, it takes the characteristic of humility to admit that you need someone to help you carry this burden. And that's where we have to start. Let's look at Exodus 18. This is an amazing story because Moses is an awesome prophet. He's not stupid. He's well trained in the military arts. He's wise. He talks with God. He's a friend of God. And yet, in this passage, he gets corrected by his father-in-law. And you know what? He has the humility to listen. So let's look at Exodus 18. And I'll read for you guys starting in verse 13. This is right after Jethro came to visit. He's rejoicing with Moses. He worships God with Moses. And then verse 13 happens. The next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people. And they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" And Moses answered them, "Well, because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it's brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I'll give you some advice. And may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases, they can decide themselves. They will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied." Verse 24. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country. All right, so we read that, and we see that Moses was working hard, like a lot of us. He was passionate about what he was doing. He had conviction about why he was doing it. The difficulty of what he was doing was not outweighing the passion by which he did it. Like a lot of us listening to this podcast, right? The things you work hard at, you believe in. The burdens you're carrying, you believe you have to carry. Jethro comes in, and he offers Moses a different point of view. He's on the outside looking in, which is so important for our situations. That we have somebody we trust from the outside who can look in and give us an honest evaluation. This is important for ministries. This is important for churches. This is important for Fortune 500 businesses. This is important for families. This is important for everything. Having somebody we know who can look in and give us some honest advice. So the first thing he does after Jethro talks to him is he recognizes that this is a burden. Before that, he didn't recognize it. Jethro told him, what you're doing is not good. That can be discouraging, right? Somebody you care about looks at what you're doing like, this isn't good. I had a situation like this actually with a brother named Steve LaFrance, who leads a campus ministry down in Miami. They are awesome. I love them a lot, and I'm so thankful for their partnership in the gospel. Steve and his wife Julian came up to Tallahassee because there was a big hurricane that came and hit Florida earlier this year, or last year. You guys remember, right? Hurricane Hermine. So he's sitting in our house and he sees me going through a roster of all the people that we've reached out to at FSU's campus. And he asked me a quick question. He's like, hey, are you going to text all those people one by one like yourself? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And he asked me, you're not going to have anybody else help you do it? And he offered me advice, and he gave me an application I could use instead to kick the messages out a lot easier and a lot more simple. And also, I thought about what he said to me after day, and I realized, you know what? I just had a Jethro Moses moment with my friend Steve LaFrance, who was able to come up here from the outside looking in and see a part of my ministry that I needed to change. And I have made that change since he's talked to me, and we've had a lot more efficiency, love, and success despite changing the way I was communicating with people. But I didn't recognize it was a burden until Steve told me something. The same way that Moses didn't recognize it was a burden until Jethro told him. So you may need somebody in your life to help you recognize your burdens. And it can be hard. Again, because some of us are used to working hard. And on the flip side, if we don't have burdens, it can be hard because we don't want them. We don't want to help somebody else carry a load, but that's a part of loving like Christ, is to help people carry their burdens. Help them carry their burdens, not their loads. Carry their burdens. So first things, recognize the burden. Have somebody from the outside look in and tell you what the burdens could be. Second thing is, he took his advice, right? I mean, Moses took the advice. He listened to what Jethro said. He obviously agreed with it, and he did it. Now, every piece of advice that someone gives you isn't going to be good. But if it's godly, and if it's true, then we should put it into practice. So he takes his advice, and what does he do when he takes it? The first thing he does is he delegates. He delegates exactly how Jethro told him to delegate. Appoint officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. It's exactly what he did. Now, what does delegating do, right? So, again, we're talking about our life, right? We're going into our lives. When you delegate to your family, when you delegate to your friends, when you delegate to your coworkers, if you're a manager or you are a CEO, what this does is it teaches people that you trust them, which is huge. When people know you trust them, they bond with you. They realize that they are important to you, and they run with what they're trusted with because it deepens the relationship. So imagine trusting your kids, trusting your husband or your wife, trusting your coworkers, trusting your friends with something that's important to you. Delegation is key because it gives people your trust. And quite frankly, sometimes people can just do a better job at something that we're trying to do alone. And we give them the room to flourish and find themselves and create it in a better way and do it better if we actually delegate. And the third thing is actually trust them with the part you give them, right? Since you're trusting them, you have to give them the responsibility. This responsibility helps them grow. This keeps them from being enabled. When you do everything alone and you don't teach people how to do it, they don't grow and they don't learn. This has been pivotal for me in ministry, is learning to delegate, learning to raise up leaders and help them take responsibility for the responsibility that Christ has given us all as servants and disciples. And one question you may have is, well, what if I don't have a team or a family who can help me? What if I don't have somebody around me who I can delegate to? Or what if I don't have somebody who can come from the outside and look in? Well, I would encourage you, just take a second to really think about who could come in and look. And even if it's not a great friend, maybe it's a great friend of a friend. And if you don't have a team, or you don't have a family or people who can help you carry your burdens, then I would say start by praying and asking God to lead you to his people, a local church, people you can connect with, real people who are trying to follow Jesus, who are living like him, who are practicing and teaching the right doctrine from the Bible, and get connected to them, because disciples of Jesus Christ will want to help you and love you and help you carry your burdens. So, quick recap. When it comes to handling burdens, recognize the burden. Have somebody from the outside look in and help you see it. Take the advice if it's good and godly. Delegate. This helps people know you trust them. Let them do their part. Give them that responsibility and let them grow. And try to get connected to a support group, whether that be a local church, someone in your family, or friends. I highly recommend the church, obviously, because these people are trying to follow Jesus. They will look out for you and help you grow. Next up, we'll be talking about the characteristic that makes a good teammate. So I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about this one. Sorry this episode went a little bit long, but we're going to go ahead and jump on off and tune in next week at 8. You guys are awesome. Thanks for listening. And please continue to share these podcasts, like our Facebook page, and follow us on Instagram. Thanks again. Thank you for listening to Candid Mike, where we share life and ministry principles to inspire transformation and ministry development. Each episode is a joy for us to record, and we are so thankful that you tune in to listen to us. A big thanks to Steezy Prime for our show music, which you can find more of his music on SoundCloud at Steezy Prime. Please stay tuned for our next episode and follow us on Instagram at Candid Mike Podcast. Thank you. Until next time.